got it, big mouth?
Another member of Parliament who I know has a strong Christian faith is Concetta Fierravanti-Wells. She's New South Wales Liberal Senator and joins us every Thursday. Connie, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen.
Completely unremarkable that a Prime Minister who has a Christian faith would say that he's doing what God wants him to do as opposed to, well, hopefully somebody else in the opposite direction.
Well, Stephen, values and beliefs are very important, and as I've always everyone knows where I stand on a whole range of issues, and I think it is important to be honest and forthright, to have the courage of one's convictions in public life. And of course, as we go out to our electors, our pre-selectors and our electors professing a certain set of values and beliefs, it's important that we carry through with those, particularly when we do come to Canberra. Otherwise, it continues to undermine the faith and trust that the electorate has in us.
Extraordinary hypocrisy from Kevin Rudd, though, given that, as I said, he was quite often doing press conferences or doorstop interviews outside church on a Sunday. You would hope that he thought he was doing God's work rather than the devil's, wouldn't you?
Well, a certain degree of hypocrisy. He relished on Sunday mornings those doorstops that he did in front of the church, but then again, one only has to look at his commentary then and his commentary now to see the hypocrisy.
Absolutely. Now, a lot of talk about quotas in the Liberal Party, gender quotas, and senior ministers in the Berejiklian government have come out suggesting that the Liberal Party should have quotas. You are amongst quite a huge number of senior Liberal women that have come out as the last line of defence against the implementation of gender quotas.
Well, as I've said, Stephen, the bad behaviour of a number of politicians should not be conflated with a need or a sudden urge to change a pre-selection process. In New South Wales, we fought very, very hard for democratic processes for plebiscites, and I strongly believe that the plebiscite system is the best system and will encourage not only a greater grassroots base engagement in the Liberal Party, but out of that broader grassroots, I have no doubt will emerge good candidates, including good women, who will feel very comfortable putting up their hands to contest pre-selection on their merit. And that's what it comes down to. Promotion should always be on merit.
Connie, as I've always said, if you had 50% men and 50% women, you'd still have 100% politicians, unfortunately.
Stephen.
A lot of talk around at the moment about our defence spending. The federal government has announced a $747 million upgrade to defence bases in the Northern Territory. Home Affairs Secretary Mike Pizzullo has warned that we need to be on a bit of a war footing. I think anybody with a reasonable view of the world at the moment thinks the same, but there seems to be a reluctance to actually really say what this is about and say that this is about the fact that China is getting more aggressive and we need to address that.
Well, can I firstly say on Mike Pizzullo's comments, I've known Mike Pizzullo for many years, including when I served as Parliamentary Secretary to the then Minister for Immigration, Peter Dutton. I have a very high regard for him, and his Anzac Day message entitled The Longing for Peace, the Curse of War, is a very thoughtful reflection on the 70th anniversary of the military alliance between US and Australia, and I agree with him. His comment is very clear. We all want peace, but we need to be alert. We need to reflect our history. We can't fall into the into appeasement, and we need to be alert to the threats in our region and prepared to respond accordingly. And look, on the issue of the spending in the Northern Territory, this is part of a $270 billion upgrade of defence capability over the next 10 years. And that's all very well, but what about the Port of Darwin? What are we doing to take back this strategic key asset in the Northern Territory? And in many ways, Stephen, the retaking of the Port of Darwin has become symbolic of our political fortitude to stand up to the bullying tactics of the Chinese Communist Party. Yeah, it is the elephant in the room, and it is the discussion that needs to be had.
But I guess the difficulty there is is, and obviously the Commonwealth they're saying torn up Victoria's Belt and Road agreements with China, but effectively nothing had actually happened as yet. There was no infrastructure in place, but the Port of Darwin is subject to a lease. How do you retrospectively handle that?
Well, Stephen, can I go back on the BRI was torn up because it fell within the parameters of the foreign relations legislation, but the Port of Darwin is not covered by the foreign relations legislation because the legislation is defective in that it excludes arrangements by state and territory governments with private corporations and especially private foreign corporations. And these are the ones which are most troubling and involve strategic assets. We all know, and we've discussed this before, that under Chinese company and national security laws, the CCP exercises effective control over not only state-owned enterprises but also Chinese private companies. So the issue of the Port of Darwin, I have spoken about this for years. I've been talking about the Port of Darwin. Now, two things here. I believe that there are circumstances which can and may cause the lease to be broken. And whilst the documents pertinent to the lease have not been made public, I have called for them to be made public. But just generally from documents that are available in the public arena, I think if the port operator were to fail to meet its legislative requirements, or there was a failure to meet defence access requirements, or if defence decided to engage its defence powers. And this is where you come back to the point that I have repeatedly made. How can one of our most strategic assets in the Northern Territory have been leased for 99 years, sadly, under Liberal governments, both state and federal, to a private company with strong ties to the Communist Party in China? And in the end, I do not agree, and I have stated this categorically with the former Defence Minister Reynolds' comments that she made on the 9th of September last year, that there are no security concerns regarding the Port of Darwin. We know that there have long been concerns held about the decision attributable to the surveillance and espionage capabilities that are presented because of the port's close proximity to Australian and US defence facilities. And we know that this is part of the strategic purpose of China's investment in the region as part of its maritime Silk Road.
All of that is fairly obvious, but are we effectively now saying that the relationship with China is past the point of no return, that it is completely disintegrated and there's no coming back?
Well, Beijing is not a good international citizen, Stephen. For example, let's look at what's happening in the South China Sea, notwithstanding the unanimous ruling the International Court of Arbitration back in 2016 in the China versus Philippines issue. They have continued to build islands illegally in the South China Sea. They are impeding the exercise of freedom of navigation operations in the South China Sea. Other issues, the continuous cyber attacks, the ongoing human rights abuses in Xinjiang against the Uyghurs, what they did in Hong Kong with the national security law, the ongoing and increasing aggressive attitude towards Taiwan. And I think that we cannot overlook the fact, and Mike Pompeo made these observations in the Australian recently, that the communist regime in China believe that the Marxist-Leninist ideology is the right one for the world, and their primary tool is their economic power, obviously, with 1.4 billion people, and they will seek to impose their will everywhere to undermine our democratic way of life, using predatory means like the Belt and Road. And so, therefore, we have to push back. We have no choice but to push back against their activities, wherever those activities may be.
There's an old Chinese curse, may we live in interesting times. Connie, good to talk to you. We'll catch up next week.
Thanks very much, Steve.